This week's parsha, we have the story of the abduction of Dinah and the actions of Shimon and Levi in wiping out the city. And the Rishonim work to try to justify their actions. And the Ramban quotes the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim, who says the following: we know that one of the Sheva mitzvahs for Nayach is called dinim. Dinim. What does dinim mean? So the Rambam says it's the obligation of the Bnei Nayach to enforce the other 6 mitzvahs. But if a Bnei Nayach sees a person violate one of the other 6, like Zara, Gezel, Shvichas Damim, he's obligated to carry out the sentence, which is that the person be executed by the sword. And the Rambam says that a failure to do so is itself a chiyuv misa, which is a tremendous chiddush. That B'nayach is chayiv not only for committing an act which violates the Sheva mitzvahs, but he's chayiv misa for failure to act. And therefore, argues the Rambam that Schem was chayiv for kidnap Dinah. That's included in Gezel. The entire population of the city was obligated to judge him and to punish him. They knew, and they didn't. So they were liable for the death penalty, and therefore they all were chayiv misa. And therefore Shimon and Levi were justified. That's the Rambam in Hilchos Malachim. The Ramban argues, the Ramban says, we don't find that a Bnei Nayach is liable for a failure to do something. If he violates actively one of the Sheva mitzvahs, he could be chayav misa. But it's not possible that if he's a sheva al tasa, for doing nothing, he should be liable. And the Ramban simply says, but if you're looking for justification, you don't have to look too far. Because the entire population undoubtedly were Evdei Zara, they were Megalei Arayas, they were in violation of the other Sheva mitzvahs. So they certainly were liable for the death penalty. So Shimon and Levi were justified in what they did. And yet, we find that Yaakov was very critical of them, both in our parsha and in Parshas Vayechi. In the brachas that he gives on his deathbed, Shimon and Levi are actually cursed. And what emerges from the Ramban is that although there was a justification for their action, but their kavana, their intent, was not to carry out the halacha. Their intent was revenge. And that in turn was motivated by anger. And therefore, Yaakov Avinu curses their anger. Parshas Vayechi, Orur apam ki oz ve'avrachim ki kashasa. He doesn't curse them for what they did, but he curses them for their motivation. They were motivated by anger. And it's very interesting that there's a tremendous dikduk on their motivation in another aspect. Now, Rashi in Parshas Vayechi points out that the klal that Yaakov Avinu gave was V'achalkem b'Yaakov v'afitzim b'Yisrael, that I will scatter them. That Shimon and Levi will be scattered. So Rashi points out that Shimon's being scattered was in a humiliating way. So, Shevet Shimon, those were the Malam Tinaikas, those were the tutors of children who had to wander from town to town for Parnasa. So for them it was a humiliating thing. V'achalkem b'Yaakov v'afitzim b'Yisrael. In the case of Levi, it was bekavod. Tfutsasam bekavod. Their scattering was bekavod. They were Shevet Levi, they received the Trumas, the Maisras, so they had to go from place to place. But it was b'derech kavod. Their being scattered was a sign of their distinction. And Rashi doesn't tell us why this was. Why was Shimon's punishment in a humiliating way? And why was Levi's punishment in an honorable way? But the clue to this is the comment of the Netziv in our parsha, and he repeats it there in Parshas Vayechi. Surprisingly enough to answer this question, he just says it, that there was a difference in the motivation of Shimon and Levi. Whereas this act of revenge could have been motivated by one of two things. One is family pride. We have a situation over here where Schem and Hamor were trying to take advantage, trying to impose their will on Yaakov and his family. So you can stand up for the family's covenant, that we're not going to be pushed around. On the other hand, it could be the motivation was because Schem broke down the barrier of Kedusha, Ben Yisrael v'Ha'amim, and therefore it was necessary to uphold the Ratzon Hashem. So the Netziv argues that Shimon and Levi had different kavanas in this point. Whereas Shimon's motivation was personal honor, family honor. Levi's motivation was Kedusha, and therefore even though they did the same thing, and they both were cursed, they had to be scattered, because if they were to be concentrated, there could be another eruption of anger. But for Shimon, it was b'derech bizayin, in a humiliating way. For Levi, it was b'derech kavod, it was in a respectable way. But it's all the kavanah, it's not the act itself. The act itself, as the Ramban says, had halachic justification. Whether you go with the Rambam's approach, with the Ramban's approach, the act itself could have been justified. It's all the kavanah. This shows a tremendous diktuk, a tremendous demand upon Shimon and Levi that even their kavanas had to be perfect, had to be pure. I'd like to put that observation on the back burner and make some observations about the place where this episode took place, in Schem. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin of Kuv Beis that Schem is a makom mezumen leperonos. This is a place which is prepared for calamity. B'Schem Ina was Dina. This is where Dina was abducted. B'Schem Machu was Yosef. This is where Yosef was sold. And B'Schem Nechluka Malchus Beis David. This is where the monarchy split. If you look in Sefer Malachim, after the death of Shlomo HaMelech, so the Jews gathered in Schem to decide whether they would accept Rechavam, Shlomo's son, as king. And Rechavam came to Schem, and the people made a demand. They said, listen, says your father put a tremendous burden on us. If you lighten the burden, we'll accept you as our king. But otherwise not. So Rechavam took counsel first with the elders that were his father's advisors, and they said, give in. Give in. If you give in today, they'll be your faithful subjects in the future. Then he took counsel with his younger advisors, and they said, don't give in. He says, be tougher. And he liked that better. And he said that if you think my father was tough, I'll even be tougher than him. And the people said goodbye. And from that, by the way, Chazal say, you see from here, that stiras zekain and binyan, that when elders tear down, it really is constructive. And binyan narim stira, and when young people try to build up, it actually is destructive. In other words, the advice of the Zekanim, which was to diminish your power, would have resulted in more power. And the advice of the Na'arim, which was to increase his power, led to a reduction of it. But in any case, that was the first blow. And when the people left Rechavam, they threw their allegiance to Yerovam, who was from the Shevet Ephraim. And that was the division of Malchus Beis David. And it all started in Schem. So we see that Schem is a makom muchen leperonos. What does that mean? That there's a place which is muchen leperonos, a place which is muchen for calamity. Like, what is the nature of Schem that it should be a makom muchen leperonos? We find another quality about Schem, very intriguing thing. We know historically Schem was the place where a great ceremony in history took place. Now, the Torah tells us in Parshas Re'eh, Parshas Kisavo, that when Klal Yisrael crosses the Yarden, they are meant to conduct a ceremony in Har Grizim and Har Hevel, where there will be blessings and curses. The people will accept the blessings and curses. And Har Grizim and Har Hevel are identified as being near Elonei Moreh. Where is Elonei Moreh? So we know from Parshas Lech Lecha that it is actually another name for Schem. It says when Avram Avinu came to Eretz Yisrael, it says Vayavar Avram Ba'aretz Ad Mekom Schem Ad Elon Moreh. So Schem and Elon Moreh are synonymous. So the Mishnah Masechah Sota says that the Har Grizim and Har Eivel are at Schem. The Torah never makes the connection explicit, but in both places it refers to Elon Moreh, so undoubtedly that's Schem. So Schem was the site of this tremendous pageant, where 6 Shvatim stood on one mountain, 6 Shvatim stood on the other mountain, the Leviim stood in the middle. There were 11 blessings, 11 curses, everyone answered amen to both. The Torah was accepted with a shvuah, with an oath. Rashi in Parshas Lech Lecha says that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu took Avram to Elon Moreh, it was to show him these mountains. Harohu Har Grizim v'Har Eivel. Hashem showed Avram Har Grizim and Har Eivel. Shesham Kiblu Yisrael Shvuas HaTorah. This is where Klal Yisrael accepted the Torah with an oath. So the Maral in that Rashi asks the question, why was it necessary for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to show Avram the mountains? HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have told Avram that you should know the time will come that in such and such place there'll be a ceremony of brachas and klalos. Why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu have to show him the mountains? I mean, everyone knows what a mountain looks like. What greater insight did Avram have because he saw the place? So the Maral says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed him the place because there is something in the nature of the place which makes it special for brachas and klalos. Because it isn't just by chance that the ceremony took place over there. It took place in that place because that was a makom miyuchad, that was a special place for brachas and klalos. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to show him the mountains. So we see that Schem has two qualities. On the one hand, the Gemara calls it a makom muchan lepuranus. On the other hand, the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu showed it to Avram shows that it's a place which is miyuchad, a place which is uniquely auspicious for brachas and klalos. So how do we understand what is the essence of Schem? In our parsha, the Ramban is merames to something which he says in Parshas Lech Lecha about Schem. A fascinating thing. Because we know that Schem was really the first place that Avram came to in Eretz Yisrael. It says, Vayavra Avram ba'aretz ad mekayim Schem ad Elon Moreh. That's the first place he camped in Eretz Yisrael. V'knani az ba'aretz. And at the time the Knani were in Eretz Yisrael. There he has a vision. V'yeveh Hashem el Avram, Hashem appeared to Avram, and he told him, to your children I will give this land. And then he built a Mizbeach. So the Ramban says a fascinating thing. He says, V'ani Maisef. He brings Rashi, and I will add, he says, Ki hechzik Avram b'makam ahu tchila. Avram took possession of that place first. V'kaidem shenitem layas ha'aretz. Before the land was given to him. Meaning he took possession of Schem before HaKadosh Baruch Hu revealed himself and said that I'm going to give this land to your children. So near Mazlo Mizeh, there's a remes here, Ki bonav yichbeshu ha'makam ahu tchila, kaidem ha'yoysom zoichim bo. That Klal Yisrael will take possession of Schem before they are zoicha in Eretz Yisrael. Before they have an entitlement to Eretz Yisrael, they will take possession of Schem. The kaidem hayos avayin yoshev ha'aretz shalem, and before the sin of the Knani is complete, la'agloisa misham, that they be exiled. Now this is a remez to something which is written later in Parshas Lech Lecha. At the Bris Bein Absarim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Avraham Avinu that Klal Yisrael will be in Golus for 400 years. V'dor revi yashuvu heina, and the fourth generation would return to Eretz Yisrael. So there are two kitzim, there are two times that are mentioned. The Or HaChaim explains that the duration of the Golus in Mitzrayim will be 400 years. That's 400 years. And then there's another case, another deadline for the entry into Eretz Yisrael. That's Dor Revi. That's the fourth generation will come into Eretz Yisrael. The fourth generation of whom? So that's a machlekes Rashi and Ramban. Rashi says it's the fourth generation from Yaakov Avinu. It refers to Kalev. The Ramban says it's the fourth generation of the Amori. But there's a special time given for the Knisa La'aretz, Dor Revi. Why? Kilo Shalem Avoin HaAmori. Because the sin of the Amori is not complete. And Klal Yisrael can't move in until the sin of the Amori is complete, and they are therefore banished. That's what the Torah says. Just Agav mentioned that the Or Chaim asks a question. So when did this happen? Presumably after the 40 years in the Midbar. So the two Kitzim, the two times, are separated by 40 years. The 400 years ended with the Yetzias Mitzrayim, but the Dor Revi ended only 40 years later. So asks the Or Chaim, but it seems from the Chumash in Parshas Shlach that if not for the Chet HaMeraglim, the Jews would have come into Eretz Yisrael 40 years earlier. I wasn't Shalem Avoin HaAmori. So the Or Chaim says a very simple answer. That the idea of a case means this is when it is inevitable. This is when it will happen, whether you are deserving or not. If Klal Yisrael wouldn't have committed the Chet HaMeraglim, they would have deserved going into Eretz Yisrael even though the Avon HaAmori wasn't complete. But because they committed the Chet HaMeraglim, and they weren't on the Madrega Tzadikim Gemurim, so they weren't Zoichet to go into Eretz Yisrael until the Avon HaAmori was complete. Now this is very similar to our current goals. That the Gemara says in Perek Chelek that there are two possibilities for the Geula. There's a Geula Bi'ita, in due course, when the final Kates arrives, and there's the Geula of Achishena. The Geula will be early, it will be hastened, and the Gemara says there's no contradiction. Zachu, it'll be Achishena. Loi Zachu, it'll be Bi'ita. Meaning the Kates means there's an inevitable deadline. By this time the Geula will come. That's the case. But through merit, it can come prematurely. So in our current goals, there are two possibilities: Be'ita and Achishena. Zachu, if Klal Yisrael merits, it'll be Achishena. Lo Zachu, it'll be Be'ita. Here it's the same thing. The Dor Revi, that we can't go into Eretz Yisrael till the Avon HaAmori is complete, that's only if we lack merit. But if we have merit, we can go in before that. So therefore, if Klal Yisrael would not have committed the Chet HaMeraglim, they would have merited to go into Eretz Yisrael. It would have been Achishena, it would have been early, premature, hastened, and we would have taken possession of Eretz Yisrael, even though the Avon HaAmori wasn't complete. But because we committed the Chet HaMeraglim, we weren't deserving. We were no longer on the level of Tzadikim Gemurim. We had to wait the extra 40 years until the Avon HaAmori was complete. Well, once they're banished, we have the right to walk in. But says the Ramban an amazing thing. That when Klal Yisrael came to Schem, which, according to Chazal, was the first place they came to in Eretz Yisrael, just like it was the first place that Avram came to, was the first place that Klal Yisrael came to, the Avon HaAmori was not yet complete. The completion of the Avon HaAmori was only after the Jews came to Schem. And from Schem they went down to conquer Yericho and Ai and all the other cities. That was the point at which it was Shalem Avon HaAmori. But when they came to Schem, it was not yet complete. That's what Ramban says. An amazing thing. He says, Ki banav yichbeshu hamakom hahu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu foretold to Avram that your children will inherit that place. Kaidem hayosim zeichen bo. Before they merit the rest of Eretz Yisrael. The Kaidem hayos avon yoshev haaretz shalem lagleis misham. Before the sin of the Amori is complete. And therefore, Luchein Omar Vaknani Az Ba'aretz. And that's why it says in the pasuk that Avram came to Schem, Vaknani Az Ba'aretz, meaning that they weren't yet banished. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu appeared to them and gave them the land, and then Avram went and he moved his tent to the mountain, Vayatik Misham Vahara, which is a remnant of the conquest of Yoshua, which followed the departure from Schem. So we see a third very interesting thing about Schem, that Schem is unlike any other part of Eretz Yisrael. Every other part of Eretz Yisrael could only be conquered after it was Shalem Avon HaAmori. But Schem was different. Schem, they had to conquer before it was Shalem Avon HaMeri. And that is all Merumas in the story of Avram. The Ramban in our parsha alludes to this when he writes that when Yaakov Avinu came back to Eretz Yisrael, likewise, the first place he came to was Schem, just like that was the first place that his grandfather Avram came to. And it all is miraculous to the fact that when Klal Yisrael comes after Yetzias Mitzrayim to Eretz Yisrael, the first place they also will come to is Schem. So this is noteworthy again on two counts. First of all, why is Schem the first place they come to? It's the first place Avram comes to, the first place Yaakov comes to, the first place Klal Yisrael comes to. And it's especially interesting, the Ramban says, that Schem is ours. We take Schem even before the Ameri forfeit their right to live there. It's not yet Shalem Avon HaAmeri, and we take Schem. Everywhere else we can't take until after Shalem Avon HaAmeri. But this we do take. I think the idea is like this. The idea that explains all these aspects of Schem, and will give us some insight into Shimon and Levi as well. There is a hanhog of Midas Hadin, and there's a hanhog of Midas Harachamim. So we tend to think, what is Midas Hadin? Midas Hadin means that we get what we deserve. If we do good things, we get schar. If we do bad things, we get punishments. Midas Harachamim, maybe we are treated well even if we don't deserve it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu accepts our tshuva. And that's certainly true. These are aspects of din as opposed to rachamim. But we pointed out many times, there's another aspect to it, which is the nisyonos that Hashem sends our way. In theory, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could make very, very strong demands of us. Right? We have no entitlement to have things easy. HaKadosh Baruch Hu could say, listen, I'm giving you a job, a very difficult job. I'm not going to give you any help, any tools, any kalim with which to carry out this job. You're responsible. Al Pi Midas Hadin would be that way. Al Pi Midas Hadin, our responsibilities would be very, very difficult, very demanding, because we have no right to demand help. We have no claim, no entitlement for siyat d'shmaya. Al Pi Midas Harachamim, our nisyonos are much easier than they would be otherwise. Now, if you think about it for a second, think about our peklach, the burdens we carry in life. As difficult as they are, it doesn't take too much imagination to figure out how they can be more difficult. If a person is struggling with poverty, okay, it's bad enough. But imagine if you have to struggle with poverty and blindness at the same time. It would be that much harder. So as difficult as our challenges are, they could easily be made more difficult. And that's also a function of Midas Harachamim. Right? That Hashem, when He determines and is keveya what our challenges in life should be, He makes them easier than they should be otherwise. One aspect of this is the following. That sometimes we make decisions. And our decisions have the potential for very, very, very serious consequences. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu saves us from ourselves. HaKadosh Baruch Hu saves us from ourselves. Let's say a person decides to take a car trip in very, very bad weather. And somehow he makes it to his destination. That's a function of Midas Harachamim. Really, such a decision to drive in the stormy weather, b'derech hateva, should result in calamity. But there's a special siyat d'shmaya, because Baruch Hu helps us. He saves us from the bad consequences of our bad decisions. That's just a mashal. Al Pi Midas Hadin, because Baruch Hu say, look, you make a decision, you make your bed, you sleep in it. Now you should suffer the consequences of your decisions. We're not going to save you from yourself. If you made this bad decision, thoughtless decision, you didn't think things through, whether it's in the realm of Gashmias or whether in the realm of Ruchnias, says that's your decision. You should have to suffer the consequences. Don't come to me that I should save you. But that's Al Pi Midas Hadin. Al Pi Midas Harachamim, Hashem does save us from our bad decisions. That is the essence of Schem. For reasons we're going to explain, Schem is a place of Midas Hadin. Schem is a place where we're on our own. Schem is a place where we have to stand on our own 2 feet. Just like there are times of the year that there is Midas Hadin in Rosh Hashanah, as opposed to Yom Kippur. There's a Midas Hadin on Rosh Hashanah, on Yom Kippur there's a Midas HaRachamim. So just like there are Chilukim in Zman, there are Chilukim in Makom. There are places in the world where they function al pi Midas Hadin. And you don't have the same Siyat Dishmaya. We don't have a Kodesh Baruch Hu saving us from ourselves in these places. And Schem is one of those places. And as a consequence, in Schem, little decisions have terrible, terrible, terrible consequences. Because in Schem, we are not saved from the consequences of our own decisions. Let's say, for example, like our parsha. Vatei Tzedina Baslei. Liros Bivnos Aretz. She went out to see what the other girls were doing. Okay, a bad decision. You know, to turn the phrase, Yireh Yerah. Right? You go to see, you are seen at the same time. So she should have figured out, if she's going to go to see what the Bnei Sa'aretz are doing, there is a possibility she will be seen, and that creates a certain danger. So it was a bad decision. A bad decision. But we wouldn't say that it was from the Chamuras. And we would have said, Al Pi Midas HaRachamim, Hashem would give the Siyat Dishmaya that she'd be protected from the bad consequences of a bad decision. But not in Schem. Schem is the place you make a bad decision, you suffer the consequences of that. You go out to see what the girls are wearing, what the girls are singing, how the girls are dancing, and you're abducted, and everything which happens, happens. Because in Schem, you are obliged to stand on your own 2 feet. This is a makom of Midas Hadin. There is no kindness, there's no Siyat Dishmaya, there's no help that a Kodesh Baruch Hu saves you from your bad decisions. You make a bad decision, you suffer the consequences. It was Yosef and the brothers, again, even though the Pasuk says they hated him, they were jealous of him, but avada, we should assume that this jealousy, this hatred, was virtually dak al dakadei nivdak. It wasn't open warfare. It was probably something that was so imperceptible that if not for the Torah's hypersensitive vision, no one would even notice it. But what came from that? One thing led to the next, the slippery slope, and ultimately they sent them to Mitzrayim. And from that, the Golus Mitzrayim followed. Because it was in Schem. And in Schem, the consequences of a bad decision unfold to their fullest extent. We don't have HaKadosh Baruch Hu saving us from our bad decisions. You make a bad decision, you set out on a bad path, what follows, follows. Rechavam, like Rechavam comes to Schem, and he has a political decision to make. Right? The people are demanding lower taxes, he would like to raise taxes, so he makes a miscalculation. I'll throw in a little politics. Right? President Obama made worse miscalculations. Right? He's not in danger of losing his job. He's not going to get impeached. Sorry to tell you that. It's not going to happen. Right? He's going to last out his term. And after that, he'll go on the lecture circuit and he'll make multi-millions of dollars. So the point is that you make a bad decision, there are consequences, but you don't lose your malchus. In the case of Rechavam, it isn't that way. Rechavam made a bad political judgment. Instead of lowering taxes, he raised taxes. He lost the malchus. It was Nechel Malchus Beis David. This is why is that? It was in Schem. Right? Schem is the Mokom Muchen Leperonis. But it's a place which is prepared for calamity. Why is it prepared for calamity? Because in Schem, you make a bad decision, even a small bad decision, the consequences unfold fully. This is the idea of Schem being a place which is miyuchad for bracha and klal. Now the Sforno makes a point in Parshas Re'eh that the brachas klalas we find in the Teichacha are extremes. The Torah says, you do the mitzvahs, there'll be an extreme of blessing. Bounty and health and shefa. And otherwise, calamity, death, plague, war. There's nothing in between. It's like either or. And the Sforno makes the point in Parshas Re'eh that that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying, that it's one or the other. When you come into Eretz Yisrael, it's not going to be average. Either it'll be an extreme of bracha or an extreme of klala. So why is that? Still, Pimida Sadin, that's the way it has to be. Because al Pimida Sadin, if you are perfect, you'll get everything. And if you are not perfect, you will suffer the worst calamities. Because al Pimida Sadin, as we've said many times from the Mesilas Yesharim, even the slightest aveira, the slightest neglect of a mitzvah, should bring total pironos, total calamity. The fact that things can be so-so, that's a sign of Midas HaRachamim. In other words, really it should be terrible, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu is chesed, so he's not going to make it utopian. But it'll be tolerable, manageable. It should be worse. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is kindness, he makes it manageable. But Al Midas Hadin, it's one or the other. Al Midas Hadin, it's either the extreme of bracha or the extreme of klal. There's no in-between. In-between means Midas HaRachamim. It means that really it should be worse. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, I'm not going to make it as if you were a tzaddik gomer, but I'll make it bearable. You'll be able to manage. But al Midas Hadin, it should be one extreme or the other. If you're perfect, your Olam Hazel will be perfect. If you're slightly imperfect, it'll be calamity. Schem is the makom which is miyuchad for bracha u'klal. Because it's a place where the nature of the place is Midas Hadin. So here there are no averages, no medians. It's either the extreme of bracha or the extreme of klal. That's the nature of the place of Schem. It says, why is Schem the place that we conquer before Shalem Avon HaAmeri? Because what is the idea of the places that we conquer after Shalem Avon HaAmeri? As we said from the Rachayim, that means these are the places that we can conquer even though we're not deserving. We're not on the Madrega of Tzaddik and Gemurim. We've committed the Chet HaMeraglim, so we only come there itself 40 years later because it's a case. What does the case mean? Case means it's inevitable. There's a historical inevitability. It's not contingent on schus or chayva. It's not dependent on merit. It says, when the time comes, ready or not. And the rest of Eretz Yisrael is that way. But there's one place in Eretz Yisrael, Schem, which you have to deserve to be able to take possession of it. Because this is a place of Midas Hadin. If you deserve it, you get it. You don't deserve it, you don't get it. There's no inevitability to it. So Klal Yisrael comes to that place before it's Shalom Avon HaAmeri. How are they Zoicha? They are Zoicha by making a wholehearted commitment. Precisely by coming to Hagrizim and Har Evel and accepting the Shvuas HaTorah. Through their commitment, they take possession of that place, Schem. So everywhere else in Eretz Yisrael is after Shalom Avon HaAmeri. There you don't need the same level of schus. Maybe you're not deserving, you get it anyway. Why? Because the time has come. But not Schem. Schem you only take possession of if you deserve it. So therefore they come to Schem before Shalom Avon HaAmeri, before the case, before there's inevitability. How do they take possession? They take possession through commitment, wholehearted commitment. Hagrizim are able to Shvuas HaTorah, Schem becomes theirs. Why is Schem the first place we come to in Eretz Yisrael? The answer is Pashat. At the beginning of an enterprise, whatever it is, conquering a land, building an institution, whatever it is, the aim has to be for perfection. Because you don't start out trying to achieve mediocrity. Sometimes, as things unfold, it turns out that way. But in the inception, in the beginning, there has to be an aim for perfection. And therefore the first place the Klal Yisrael comes to, the first place Avraham comes to, the first place Yaakov comes to, the first place Klal Yisrael comes to, is Schem, is the Mokum Midas Hadin. It's the place where the demands are the highest, where the consequences are real, where the Baruch doesn't save you from yourself, where it's either bracha or klala, where there's nothing in between. That's the nature of Schem. Right? It's the place we come to before Shalem Avon HaAmeri. We can't be Zeiche in Schem because the time has come. It has to be that we deserve it. And that's the first place we come to, because that's how the initial conquest of Eretz Yisrael has to be carried out. It has to begin with that idealism. It says, if in the end it doesn't work out, so after the fact, b'di'evet is b'di'evet. But lechatchila, the initial entry has to be the ideal. And that's Schem. That's what coming to Schem means. That's why in Schem there's a tremendous diktuk. Everything that happens in Schem, there's a tremendous, tremendous diktuk. Not only that you have to do the right thing, but your kavanas have to be perfect. If your kavana is not perfect in Schem, that's a calamity. It says everywhere else, al pimidas harachamim, there could be a consideration. Listen, you did the right thing. Your kavana wasn't pure. Okay, your kavana wasn't pure, but you did the right thing, so it's good enough. But in Schem, which is the makom of din, the makom mucham l'puranos, there even the kavana is a factor. And therefore, Shimon and Levi are not to blame for what they did. As the Rishonim say, there were tremendous justifications for everything they did. 100%. It says, what was the Taina? The Taina and Shimon and Levi was their kavanah. That their kavanah wasn't to carry out the halacha, to carry out the sentence for Bnei Nayach, whatever the case may be. The kavanah simply was revenge. In Schem, that's a Taina. That's a tviyah. It's interesting that Schem is the first capital of Malchus Yisrael. The Malchus of Yerovam is established in Schem. Later it's moved to Shomron. But the first capital of Malchus Yisrael is in Schem. Right? That's why Rechavim went there. Right? When the people were debating, should we accept Rechavim, should we not accept Rechavim, the alternative was the Malchus of Yerovam, which would have been founded in Schem. So therefore they called Rechavim to Schem. And the Mefarshim point out, that should have been Rechavim's signal. He should have figured out he didn't have the people on his side. Had the people been on his side, they would have come to him in Yerushalayim. And when they call you to a meeting, you know that you're in trouble. But he didn't take the hint. But what is the idea of Schem being the capital of Malchus Yisrael? Because we know that the chiluk between Yehuda and Yosef essentially is this. In other words, Yosef is Tzadik Yisod Olam. He is perfection. Because Yehuda, the beauty of Yehuda is tshuva. Is tshuva. Tshuva is not acceptable in Midas Hadin. Midas Hadin, there's no makom for tshuva. There's Schem is the place where you can have a melech who is the tzaddik gomer. Al Midas Hadin, that can be his seat of Malchus. It can't be the seat of Malchus of Yehuda. Malchus Yehuda can't take place in Schem. It says Rechavim should have understood that if he has to become the king in Schem, it's not going to happen. Rechavim from Shevet Yehuda, he can be the king in Yerushalayim, right? Not the king in Schem. In Schem, the only person who can be the king is the person from Shevet Ephraim, from Yosef. Tzadik Yisod Olam, who's absolutely perfect. And that's what the Gemara says about Rechavim. The Gemara says about Yerovam, rather. The Yerovam really was perfect. Until that fatal flaw came his way. And what was the fatal flaw? The fatal flaw was Gaiva, the Gemara says. It was his pride. And the Gemara says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu appeared to Yerovam and said, Chazar bach, do tshuva. V'ani v'ato ben Yishai netayel b'Gan Eden. And you and I and ben Yishai and you, we will stroll in Gan Eden together. So Yerovam said, Ni b'Reish, who will be first? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, ben Yishai. So the Yachal Obin, I don't want that. In other words, as we pointed out many times, the sakana, the danger to the person on the darga of perfection is gaiva. That's the danger. Right? We talked last week about Shaul HaMelech. The Shaul HaMelech, the Gemara says, his malchus wasn't nimshach, shlohaya b'shum doifi. There was no imperfection. Because the same perfection that Chazal say Shaul had, as well Yosef had. Says to be the king in Schem, in the Mokum of Midas Adin, you have to have a level of perfection. But that's the great sakana. The great sakana is a person in that dark of perfection can succumb to gaiva, and the entire malchus collapses. But that is the essence of the malchus of Schem. The malchus of Yehuda doesn't have that flaw, because you have the kuba shel shratzim that came from Rissa Moavia. There was that skeleton in the closet. It says, but more than that, David HaMelech, why we admire David HaMelech is not because he was the Tzaddik Gomer, it's precisely because he was the Baal Tshuva. Right? That itself is a kuba shel shratzim for all generation. So that's the essence of Yehuda. Yehuda can't be the Melech in Schem. Right? Schem makes demands which can't be met by the Baal Tshuva, can't be met by Shevet Yehuda, only met by Shevet Yosef, and with the risk of succumbing to Gaiva. So Schem is the place where Malchus Yehuda has to give way to Malchus Yisrael. That's the ultimate Puranos, and of course we suffer the consequences of that Ad Hayom Hazeh. But this is what Schem is. Schem is that place of perfection. Right? It's the gateway to Eretz Yisrael precisely, because in the inception of the enterprise, it has to begin with that perfect ideal. So as time passes, so then reality sets in. Things aren't as they always are meant to be. But initially, it has to be the perfection of Schem. That's why Schem is the gateway to Eretz Yisrael. It's the first place that Avraham comes to, the Yaakov comes to, and ultimately that Klal Yisrael comes to when they leave Mitzrayim.